guys, welcome back to part 2 of the initial episode that we did. I don't know why I'm used to being laughed at by my wife. So, but this is part 2 of the hot takes video that we did, and we have a lot of common questions that people have on nutrition. So we're going to ask Geena and Ellie to give us good answers to some of these questions that people have about, am I doing nutrition the right way? Is this something I should do? So we're going to talk about all that. The first thing I want to ask about, because this is something that if you ever scroll through social media or get online, you're going to find quick fix diets. You're going to find fad diets that every influencer out there says, hey, this is going to help you. This is going to work. You should do this. Can you guys give me an example of one of those common quick fix diets, and where does it come short in actually helping someone achieve good health?
Just one?
Yeah, just give me an example of one.
I mean, I'll just straight up say keto. I'm not going to demonize it and say no one should ever be using it. I'm just going to say where it's helpful is that it eliminates a large portion of where people get their calories, which is fat. I mean, carbs. Sorry, it eliminates carbs, which is where most people do and tend to go into a surplus, right? Mm-hmm. Where it falls short is massive in the sense that carbs is our body's primary fuel source. Our brain runs off of glucose, so where it falls short is you're going to feel terrible for a long period of time. You're not going to function off of the fuel source that our body was made to primarily run on. And you're missing out on a lot of micronutrients that you can primarily get through carbohydrate food sources. So I would never go with anything that cuts out an entire macronutrient.
Yeah. One that's becoming more and more popular is the carnivore diet, which honestly, I only see the positive. I'll give a positive. You're going to get protein in, right? And we know that's something that a lot of people have a difficult time hitting a daily goal. So if you're doing the carnivore diet, I'm pretty certain you're going to be getting an adequate amount of protein in. However, you are virtually getting no other nutrients in, right? Because you are purely eating different meat sources. So you're getting 0 grams of fiber in every single day. And we know fiber is super important for longevity. It is what regulates us, keeps our gut healthy, and the gut is central to everything else. And just really with the carnivore diet, I could even see people doing the keto diet if that works for them. Like you said, wouldn't suggest it, but I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I would say I am the carnivore diet just because of all of the results coming back from studies where people's cholesterol levels are astronomically high. And there have been deaths, very young people, because their cholesterol has just totally skyrocketed because of the amount of saturated fat in these diets. It's not healthy, especially when you don't have any fiber that's helping filter out LDL cholesterol. So anyway, that's one that I see people doing, and I just truly would never recommend it to anyone.
Yeah. The Carnivore MD, the guy that kind of started, spearheaded this movement, Paul Saladino, I think is his name.
Sorry.
It's controversial.
Tell us how you really feel, Tanya.
Yeah. No, I mean, he recently came out, he wrote books on this, spearheaded the movement, and he was saying how when he was surfing wherever he lives, he started experiencing terrible cramps, debilitating to the point where he couldn't even get through a surfing session. And that is in large part when you eliminate most carb sources other than fruit, which I think is the main one that they eat on the carnivore diet, you're gonna run into issues like that, right? And so he couldn't even do a normal activity of daily living, which is a hobby, right? And he's come back and started to say, maybe I was wrong on certain things. Maybe you do need more than just meat and fruit. Right.
Yeah, and I think to say on a lot of this is because the human person, the human body is so individualized, and so we're all so biologically unique. I think that you hear about some wild success stories with the carnivore diet as it pertains to someone who's going through poor health or something like that. And I've still the words out of your mouth. I think anytime you go from having no structure in your diet to having structure in your diet, you could have some pretty significant health benefits from that, particularly if you're in a massive caloric deficit for the majority of your life. And all of a sudden you hop on this carnivore diet where, of course, you're going to bring in a ton more calories, healthy fats, and a really solid high-end source of protein. So I think a lot of people, I think about Jordan Peterson's wife, Tammy, Matt Fradd's wife, they've had a ton of success with that. I would love to know what their diets were beforehand so we could compare and contrast. But I also think there is a very highly genetic uniqueness to some of these things as it comes down to. But overall, absolutely, just having structure. But then if you can structure your actual nutrition structure with the right amount of macronutrients, you're going to have a better overall outcome. Yeah, so I think y'all kind of pertain to some of these questions that I have is talking about how does health is individualized, right? So what works for one person may not work for another person. Could you guys give me, because you've worked with a ton of people, could you guys give me some examples of that and maybe do it in a way to where someone who's listening to this podcast can take that away and say, okay, maybe what's working for my friend may not work for me. If you have any examples of that you could use.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, with my clients, something that has been extremely helpful is that, like you said, some people thrive and really enjoy carbs and may not enjoy fat quite as much. I mean, that's me, for example. Like, I love sweet potatoes. I love oatmeal.
Geena, hey.
Hi.
You cut off for a second. You
Start back from extremely helpful.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Something that has been helpful for my clients is to know that as long as their total calories are in check and their protein, that how carbs and fats shake out throughout the day is really not make or break. So for someone who may enjoy carbs a little bit more, if their diet has more carbs than fat versus their friend who has more fats than carbs, it doesn't matter. And so when prescribing different calories and macronutrient ratios, I tend to just stick with total calories and protein. That way people have the flexibility in their day to accommodate their activity, because if they're more active, they may need more carbs. If it's a rest day and they want to eat a little bit higher fat, that's okay, but it's not going to minimize progress in any sense, so to speak, because we're hitting the two main things that matter the most for overall health.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all I'll say to this from a macro view is the best plan is one that you can follow. And I think different clients forget that people have different lifestyles and that some people work a desk job, some people work a construction job. And so the exact formula that I might give one person might look vastly different than another person when it comes to just a prescription for how to have habits to live out a healthy lifestyle, right? The principle doesn't change. We want people getting steps. We want people exercising. We want people eating whole foods. Like the thing undergirding it doesn't change, but how that manifests in a day, I'm going to prescribe based on what that person can actually execute. So if I never give a construction worker a step goal, well, duh, that's because he's on his feet all day, right? And so sometimes I have clients over here being like, well, husband and wife is a good example, right? What I give a male might look very different than what I give a female. And so I think we just have to remember that the way that plans are executed are given to you are so that you can do it, right? Yeah. And that might look different.
Yeah. Ellie had a post with FemSav with her mom on bread a while back, and the thing went viral. I think the big thing you said in there, like, bread is not bad for you. It
says bread doesn't make you fat.
Bread doesn't make you fat, and I think it went viral because people are craving to hear that. Why is that statement, bread doesn't make you fat? Why do you think that went so viral online? What do you think about that made people respond in the way they did?
Yeah, it was sourdough bread, first of all, so it was homemade sourdough bread, which I think is important to point out, and then it was. It's not clickbait, but I wanted to get people's attention because number one, like, bread doesn't make you fat, and excess of calories make you fat. Mm-hmm. So I'm not lying, but it got people's attention in the sense of, like, you can enjoy foods you want to enjoy. If you make your bread and it's sourdough bread, is that better than store-bought bread? 100%, right? But I was basically just telling them, how can you incorporate this in a healthy lifestyle? And people love it because all we ever hear and what we're fed by diet culture is you can't have this, you can't have that, eliminate this, eliminate that, it's going to make you fat, this is a bad food, this is a good food. My message was, you can absolutely have this in. Let me give you all the information you want to know about optimal, what's best, and then, from there, see where you can filter in and what you're ready, willing, and able to do. If you're not going to make your own bread, here's the next best option.
And it's like we say all the time, the dose determines the poison. Like, if bread was your sole food group for every single meal, I would even say sourdough bread's not ideal. But like you said, there's a healthy way to incorporate these foods into a diet that make it sustainable long term. Like if I have to live the rest of my life without eating sourdough to be healthy, like I don't want to do that.
Right. Right.
Do you guys think that is a great kind of segue into, is it better for someone to cook the majority of their food as opposed to going out and getting it from somewhere else?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if we could live on a homestead and make everything ourselves, that would be amazing. But again, like, are we going to say that and now people feel like what they're doing isn't good at all and they can never be successful? Yeah, no, that's not the message. We have to acknowledge that where we live, what we're ready and able to do, right? Mm-hmm. But it's always better to make your own food.
Okay, yeah. On kind of trying to stay in the same ballpark, how much of a role do genetics play? Because we talked about different types of fad diets and some of this. If people are eating, you can have one person eating the same food as someone else and having a dramatically different response. What are the role of genetics in our nutrition?
I mean, I couldn't give you like an exact percentage in terms of like, oh, your genetics will make up 50% of the way you look, whereas food makes up the other 50. I think it really, did I cut out for a second?
You're still here.
Okay, y'all froze on my end. So I was like, oh no, I think I went away again. That one's a tough one. And the more I have been in the research and have studied metabolism, yes, everyone's metabolism is different. There's no question about it. But the degree that it varies, I do not think is substantial as what we used to. Like, everyone used to say, oh, her metabolism's just way faster, that's why she's thin. I think it has more of the fact to the movement out, not necessarily structured activity, but like neat, how we talk about all the time, Ellie, like steps. And is she, up and doing things around the house and yard work? I think that has the bigger implication on overall weight. Not necessarily metabolism. Not saying it's just a fixed number, but I don't think it varies by like hundreds and hundreds of calories between people, because as we know, muscle mass it's only a 6-calorie-ish difference between fat per pound. So if you gained 10 pounds of muscle mass, you're only expending 60 extra calories a day, which we know that is actually very minimal. So yes, muscle's conducive for health, but in terms of just expending more calories at rest, it's not actually as metabolically active as we used to think it was.
And yeah, and I guess trying to think of how some of my clients have phrased this, like when it comes to a hot take, I think a lot of times they'll say they'll blame a lack of progress on their genetics. For example, I have a client who really wants abs. I've tried to I've tried to communicate, hey, absolutely, I want to help you accomplish whatever goal you have within reason and within health parameters, right? But here's the bottom line. Like, I am 5'1". My torso is smaller than my hand. Like, I can put my hand on my torso and, the width of my hand is it, right? So if I really, really wanted abs, obviously I would have to lose the requisite weight to be able to show that muscle. But then secondly, I might have 1 or 2 abs actually even show and fit there, right? Like, I can't fit 6 squares. I'm just anthropometric wise, I have a short torso, right? As opposed to my twin, who's like 5'5" and her torso is very long, she's going to be able to show a 6-pack just a lot better. She has more space, right? So even when we think about genetics, I think it's important to, think about, okay, your family history and all that, but also just look at your body type. If you're someone who's dying for massive biceps, but your arms are as long as Michael Phelps, I mean, you're not going to get that massive bicep head that a little tiny person whose arm is barely a foot long is going to have, And so it's just important to factor that in too for expectations. Like, hey, let's see, the way I tell my clients is, let's see what your genetics can express and then be really proud of that. I am never going to look like a long, lanky swimmer, and that's okay.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, like, we're all predisposed to gain weight in certain areas. Like, we can't be like, oh, I want to gain my weight in my butt. Like, maybe I'm going to gain it in my midsection or my face. But that doesn't mean you can't make progress. I think you're exactly right, Ellie. People want to blame like their body shape and size or their metabolism on, oh, it's just broken, or, oh, I just look this certain way. I love that saying that you said, like, let's see what your genetics can express. We're not going to ever look the same based on what we eat because of our genetics, but that doesn't mean I have to weigh this certain amount and look this certain way. I can 1000% change that. So it's not, I don't want people to feel like their body size, shape, genetics are like a death sentence. You can definitely work in the opposite direction, right? It might be a little bit more difficult, but you can still achieve progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, last one. We're gonna end after this one, and I wanted to end on a kind of a really hot take, but you guys make what you will with this statement. So, I don't want to give up the foods that I love, so I'm not gonna change my diet at all. I'm just gonna outwork it. I'm gonna work out enough to overcome my diet. Can I do that?
And you start.
Sure. I mean, I'm gonna say, unless you are the like Matt Frazier or anomaly of the fitness world, no. If you're just the average Joe who has an 8-hour workday, who has a family and thinks that they're going to be able to pretty much have a full-time job in the gym, I would say your expectations are not real. Because, I mean, just logically thinking about how fast you can consume calories versus expend calories, it's absolutely insane. Like, if we just totally averaged out, you run 1 mile, you burn 100 calories. It's usually typically less. That takes 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, well, how fast can you eat 100 calories? That could be 2 bites of a candy bar. And so we have to think, like, if you're not willing to change anything about your diet and you think that you can spend hours upon hours upon hours in the gym, maybe you do have the time for that. At some point, though, mentally, physically, you won't be able to keep that up forever. So I would want to have a conversation about how we could maybe start small, give up a couple things or swap a couple things out.
Yeah, the honest answer is that works for a while for a certain person. Like Geena said, if you have all the time in the world to go be a gym rat and live in the gym, great. I mean, cool, do it. And you want to eat pizza like Matt Frazier did for the first part of his career, fine. But your ceiling all of a sudden might drop from here to here. Okay, so yeah, you can be really stinking good, let's say from a performance standpoint, but what could you be, that ceiling has lowered, right? Because your nutrition is not there. Now for Gen Pop, someone who's not Matt Frazier, just think about too, yeah, if you're in the gym and you go do 2 sessions, great, that's awesome. Or you're walking a ton and doing 1 workout and you're grinding, right? Going back to what we said earlier, how are you gonna feel, right? If your diet is trash, you're gonna wake up possibly the next morning and just not want to go to the gym, but you're going to do it because you know that that's all you have going for you from a health perspective. So it's just kind of like, let's just be normal human beings and like, in my opinion, and not be so extreme in certain areas so that we can live a flexible, normal life, right? I don't want to have to go on to vacation and work out a ton because that's all I'm doing from a health perspective, right? So yeah, I did it. I'm guilty of that for a while. I mean, early on, I didn't understand a lot about nutrition when I was in junior high. And I was like, I love working out. I'm just going to go use all this youth and energy to just go try to be the best athlete I can and grind in the gym. But my ceiling, I hit it very early. Uh-huh. And then once I started being more flexible in both areas is when I really saw amazing return on investment. I felt better. I wanted to work out more because I was eating enough and I was eating the right things.
I love to compare, we talk about CrossFit a lot. I love to compare CrossFit to the main sports like basketball, football, baseball, and what some of those professional athletes do. And I think it's a great example of what genetics can do, first off, because these professional athletes are unreal. And a lot of the younger guys have the worst diets you can imagine. I mean, eating terribly. But then you get to the veterans, and as they move further the chain, they're eating incredibly healthy because they realize as a younger athlete, they probably could get away with it. But as soon as you start to deal with injury, as soon as you start to deal with compromising health, you have to start taking those things into account. So just from a longevity perspective, from a performance aspect, absolutely. But also, I agree with you. I think Frazier's the one who said this. When he started taking his diet seriously, his ceiling exploded, and he had so much more in the tank to give. So, yeah, I think that's that's pretty good. Probably a good place to end too.
Yeah.
So, hey guys, if you enjoy this stuff, you enjoy this episode, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell. We're going to keep putting episodes out like this. I'm going to keep asking Geena and Ellie questions. And if you have any questions, let us know in the comments. And
Post your hot take.
Post your hot take, and we'll address them in another episode on down the road. So, yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Thank you.